this will end up on YouTube, hopefully. All goes well, and we are getting a good response. We had a little video there that I don't know if you all saw it, of the charging damage problem, what to do, what to check, with Julian and Glenn and Jim and Heather. And I thought it was just a skookum video. I really enjoyed that. I got some chuckles and I actually learned a few things. I thought, wow, cool. Anyway, I think we can get started here. This is our Zoom number 311. Well, that includes all those meetings back to 2011, I think, 2012 from the beginning. And I will point out that the club sort of started officially in early 2012. So this is like, we're heading into year 11, is that right? Holy smokes. So we've been doing remarkable things, and this year is no different. It's busy, although we're just starting to get back to public, and we did pull back the Zoom events to once a month, I think. I stepped down as president because I got busy with other job, and Glenn Gary is the interim president. He sends his regrets. He had an event up island with family that double booked, and Heather likewise is, I believe, in Nanaimo and thought she might be able to join, but not sure. So she's not with us either, but we have Jim Henshaw here running the buttons. I'm David Grove, past president with the club, and we have a quorum. It's not a meeting, I know. So I would like to start right off by welcoming you all and then introducing our guest. Our guest today with TrueEV out of Vancouver, I think, but we're going to leave it to Henry to introduce himself and the company. So why don't you just take it away, Henry, and please say as much or as little as you want, and we'll go into a Q&A chat type of event once that gets going, which typically people put up their hand, or they ask to put their hand up on the chat, or they put their question on the chat, or they just barge in. Okay.
Yeah.
Take it away. Thanks.
It sounds great. Hi, everyone. My name is Henry. I'm in Victoria, actually. We're a company here in Victoria, so we're all kind of close. So talking a bit about me before I get into TrueEV. I'm originally from Brazil, as I previously mentioned. I moved to Canada and I'm simply in love with the country, and I decided to work with something that I've always liked, which is a mixture of technology, green technology, and things that have a good impact in nature. I've always loved that. So I believe that working with EVs, and especially EV charging, kind of encompasses all of that. And I'm really grateful and proud to work with such a great mission and something that I've always kind of identified with. It's kind of odd. Like, I think our path kind of leads us to something that we don't even understand. And then once we get to that place, we kind of look back and see, oh, all of that kind of made sense. And it's kind of the same for me now working with clean tech. So this is a bit about me. I have a background in business, psychology, and economics, academic background. And now I'm a business development manager. So I help pretty much to develop the new branches of the business. I'm not part of like the technical team. I'm more of the developing business part of the team. So talking a bit about TrueEV. TrueEV was founded around 5 years ago. As a tech company at first, and then TrueEV became like a branch, like another company that kind of was formed from that previous company, which is called Talos. So we've been working with tech for some time, and TrueEV is like a newer version of like the new branch of that company, which ended up being another company. But we are solely focused in EV charging. So that's one of the great things about TrueEV, because the only thing we do is EV charging, different than most companies that do EV charging be that Victoria or Vancouver or wherever in Canada. They tend to do other things, and then they do EV charging installation as well. But no, the only thing we do is EV charging installation. So we buy the charger. We don't produce our own chargers, but we buy them from brands such as Flow, ChargePoint, Wallbox. Those are our primary sources. And we have a network of electricians, and then those electricians would install the chargers for us. So we're kind of like project managers. I try to explain that the best way possible, because as I said, we don't produce the chargers, and people from inside our team are not the ones who do the installation. So we kind of get the chargers, get the the installers and then put them all together, kind of like Uber puts together the drivers and the people that want the ride. So it's kind of like that in a certain way. But our vision and mission is basically our idea would be connecting Canada throughout EV charging infrastructure, because I'm sure you all know the regulation that's coming up in 2035 that all vehicles in Canada that are sold, new vehicles should be electric. So we're definitely betting on that. And our mission and vision is to go to that point, to our fullest potential, and then put public charging infrastructure, private infrastructure. So we work with businesses, we work with homeowners, and we work with the government as well. We are an Indigenous owned organization, so we've worked with some Indigenous groups. For example, the Victoria Friendship Center. We've done projects with them for those level 2 chargers that are the bigger ones with more voltage. So we've worked with companies like that, and we've done some home projects as well. So we've done a bit of everything, but we're still like finding where we're going to focus. Now we're able to do everything, but
about a Virgo vacation home. You
What?
always have the whole place to yourself.
We mute.
You're in for the shock of the year.
Something's coming through, Jim. Jim. There. Okay. Sorry, Henry. Carry on.
Okay. But yeah, moving forward, as I said, we're capable to do pretty much everything now, but moving forward, as soon as the company grows, I think we're going to settle in one thing or the other. So that's kind of where we want to go. We really do believe, and we understand what Canada wants as a country, and we really are taking a bet on that, and we want to invest in that. And as I said, the idea is to grow the charging infrastructure in Canada, which is still kind of primary when compared to some states in the US, like California, for example. So we want to grow, and especially Vancouver Island. I do think Vancouver Island is an amazing place to own an EV. I actually just wrote an article about that and posted in our blog. I even mentioned you guys. I don't know if you saw the article came out yesterday, so I don't know if you actually saw that, but we wrote the article I wrote the article a few weeks ago and published it yesterday on our blog. I'll share the link with you guys. But yeah, it was like the name of the article is Why Vancouver Island is the Perfect Place to Own an EV. And it has a lot to do with the community, in my point of view, the community, the roads, which are very good. And we also don't have a lot of snow, which I know EVs they're not really compromised by the weather, but it's always good to be in the warmer weather, such as Victoria and Vancouver Island in general. I do really believe that we are on the right track to build a charging infrastructure in Canada, and we as a community are just growing. So we're very, very happy about that. Something quite interesting about us as well, we're partners with Wallbox, quite close partners, and we're going to be one of the first, if not the first in Canada, which are going to receive the Quasar 2, which is a bidirectional charger. So for you guys that have Nissan Leaf is one of the only cars that allows bidirectional charging. Are you all familiar with bidirectional charging? I would presume so.
You can chat about it a little bit.
Sure. Yeah. So yeah, the great thing about bidirectional charging is that it's quite, I would say, cleaner and more efficient than the regular chargers, because what happens is the bidirectional charger would charge your car, and then if there is any problem in the grid, the bidirectional charger would use the battery from your car to charge your house. So it's quite reliable in that sense, that if there's any power shortage, which is something that could happen in the future because we're all using more and more and more energy, not only for cars but for everything. So if something like that happens, then the bidirectional charging can really come to place. So in only a few cars nowadays allow bidirectional charging, and the Nissan Leaf is one of them. So you mentioned that when you first started the club here, and you guys were talking about EVs in 2011. The Nissan Leaf, of course, was one of the top ones, and still is. And Nissan is great in that because, bidirectional charging is basically the future. I see it that way, especially because of how much power we're using for everything and how much electric things in general, like computers and phones and everything nowadays is electric. So having the ability of charging your home with your car is quite the thing. Even though we don't really have power shortages that often nowadays, even if we did, it would be quite the thing. So it's very nice. And yeah, so our like one of the reasons why I wanted to chat with you guys as well is how do we get to the point that I mentioned? Like, how do we get to providing charging infrastructure for Canada and being able to basically grow throughout the company? And that's something that's quite relevant for us, and it is the electrician network, which I was talking to you guys about, that we are project managers. So we buy the chargers, and we can buy the chargers from literally wherever in Canada, and we can install it pretty much wherever in Canada, because we don't have, our electricians are not inside our team. We have connections with certified electricians which have experience in EV charging installation, and we connect the chargers with them, and they do the installation for us. So growing, our idea would be getting to the point that I mentioned. Our idea would be growing our electrician network outside of BC and throughout all Canada, so we could install the home chargers or the public chargers or the company chargers wherever in Canada we wanted. So we would be able to grow that infrastructure, be that, as I said, public, private, or home infrastructure. And growing that electrician network has been definitely one of our main challenges now. Our idea would be to create a backend system, which would be very, very exciting for us. And if we're able to do that, we're going to be connecting the electricians from all over Canada and being able to do the projects, the home installations, or the as I said, the business and the public in less than a week after they booked it. So it's going to be quite efficient and very easy, very fast. We have amazing ideas now of how we're going to move forward in all of those senses. So we're very excited for the future, and you guys play a huge role on that. And also something that I'm very happy, as I said in the beginning, that you guys play a huge role in this, because if you guys walk so we could run, right? You guys were the ones who started this movement in Vancouver Island, in Victoria specifically. And if we're able to now have a company, which is us, only focused in EV charging, is because you guys built the base, and we're very grateful for that. You guys developed the base that we have now, the community that we have now, and allowed many people to know more about EVs. And this is great. Like, we're definitely really grateful to you guys and some other EV associations throughout the island and in Canada, because you build a foundation, and that's really, that was and still is very important for us, and for pretty much like the EV movement in general, because it's such a fundamental thing, and it's going to continue being just more and more crucial. So we're quite happy about that. And I wanted to connect with you guys to understand more about what you do, and how do you do it? Like, how do you connect the community in Victoria? What role can a company like us, for example, play on this? Because we're now developing more of our marketing side as well. I know you guys have a great Instagram, a great website. So being able to have those conversations of like, how do you guys do it, and what role can a company like us play in that to help grow the community as well? Because we are very interested in growing the community, the EV community in Victoria and in the island in general. So how can we help you do that? Yes, because that's all we want. We want to grow, and we want to connect all Canada throughout the charging stations. So whatever we can do, which is in our power to grow that, we'll do it. And that's basically what I wanted to say in that sense, and have that conversation with you. So ask you how those things work on your end, and being able to learn from you guys as well, to get to the point that we want.
Yeah, that's great, Henry. Thank you for that. It's a good outline. I think that you asked a big question about the engagement and how we did it, and it grew so organically through many different steps. So I think that any company that's interested in working with us and us with them, like, so that we develop this longer term thing, it's just a matter of like trust with any relationship, and we spread the word. We have these Zoom events. We have other public engagements. I mentioned Eco Night. We have the sponsorship on the website. That's one of the few sources we have for revenue generation and so on. But we do have, I'm sure, lots of questions right now. And as we go, I'm hoping that some of the answers you're looking for or some of the ideas will come flowing in your direction.
Yeah.
The engagement that people in the club have with each other often is off meeting. In other words, like we'll have questions on the media streams. People will have a problem. It can be a very simple problem. It can be a complex maintenance issue, and it gets put out. Oftentimes it comes through the chat button or the contact button on the website. Jim sees it and sends it out. Or more lately, in the last year or so, it's become more of a Facebook or Twitter feed type of response.
Mhm.
People like Eric and Bruce, well, a lot of people on this site, on this meeting even, are very quick to respond with helpful answers. And it's amazing how far I think that's gone to help people out with challenges. I'd like now for people perhaps to ask questions of you, if that's possible.
Yeah.
One place I'd like to start is myself. I'm now in council of the city of Colwood, and I'm always interested in learning how I can encourage cities' administrative staff to do more through legislation. And when there's nothing we can do with the building codes, but to encourage EV-ready housing. So individual houses right now, Colwood runs a conduit from the panel vertically to the underneath of the roof line, so that the solar panel installer, for instance, can punch a hole through. Nobody wants to do it because it voids the roof warranty. The solar guys say, well, we have a warranty that replaces it. Then the EV thing then is, I don't even think we have it yet, but the idea is that there would be breaker capacity within the panel right there to accommodate EVSE level 2. And so in an existing home, it's a bit more challenging, of course, because some of these houses are 100 amp or whatever, and there's lots of solutions. So we help people in that way. I was just wondering, because of your expertise coming in with these chargers, how you might address that idea of how municipalities can encourage builders to see the efficacy and the benefits of actually putting this, if not the actual EVSE unit in, but bringing the power actually to a site where maybe a dead end of box, all they have to do is add the unit.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think legislation is going to change a lot moving forward because of the target from the government. So I think now, like, the federal government already recognizes the importance and how crucial EVs are for not only the weather in the company, and even going to be a lot for the economy as well. So in my mind, what's going to happen, I don't think we can talk about like a short-term solution. I think it's really hard, because what you're going to have to do is like basically change the legislation from the municipality or the province. So what we do, but that would be like what I'm thinking now, would be creating that close relationship with the government to show that that's a reality now. And the government already invests in a certain way, because we have the rebates, right? We have the rebates for the EVs and for the EV chargers. So I'm thinking that the government already recognizes that this is a must, and this is something that's going to keep happening, and they want to invest in it. But that's the federal government. I'm not quite sure of how much the local governments are aware and are willing to invest in EV charging. So I think the best bet that some like you guys or us in general, like people would have on changing that legislation and making sure that the government recognizes this as a crucial problem, is making them understand that the federal government wants it, and in a way they're going to have to follow eventually. So maybe, have you guys had any like meetings with the board from the municipalities, like the mayors and
Well, it's discussed, and Colwood has got a low carbon emissions standard plan that was passed and is being developed and going to public hearing. And the low carbon aspect is including all sorts of things, but EVSE or ready homes, as well as MERBs, are a big part of that, of course. And the city of Colwood is buying electric vehicles. So there's many positive signs and it's moving in a
Oh,
good
so
direction.
yeah.
Storage batteries as well, right?
And
Mhm.
we also have regular meetings with the climate committees of Victoria Saanich.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and Colwood is starting to build their committee structure. So hopefully, well, I think they're going to have an environment committee. I'm hoping to sit on it. So then we
Yeah.
kind of make these stronger connections all the time.
Uh-huh.
So maybe it's more of a question of the fact that you're aware of that and that we're all pushing and working in that direction. So any new ideas, there's often resistance by people who simply say this certain thing cannot be done
Why not?
when
Why-
we actually have the technology, and also why not find the solutions, and they're already out there often. I know some of the people in this club and in the past in Viva have been very creative and innovative in how to charge their cars from their homes.
Mhm.
But there's new technology available all the time. Okay, well, we can go on. I'm sure everybody's got more interesting questions than what I'm asking here. I think we can make a good contact there, so it's great to have that connection.
Yeah, that's a great point that you asked. Yeah, really. I'm trying to still thinking about it, but yeah,
Well, if
it's a
you
tricky
know,
question.
if the municipalities make these requirements happen at whatever level we're allowed to do it, because building code is not it, because that's provincial 100%. They won't let us go near anything, but we
Yeah.
can encourage it, and we can demand EV ready housing. We can actually ask for that. That's like a land use tied to zoning type of a requirement.
Yeah.
That
yeah,
means that city, everything new built requires one of your machines, right?
yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's good for business and it's good for the
Yeah,
environment.
and-
That's what we're here
And
for.
Yeah.
pre-wiring something like that is so much cheaper than doing
Yeah.
it after the fact. Well, I used to install home elevators, and it costs you a couple of $1,000s to prepare a new house for an elevator.
Mhm.
It can cost 1.5 times, twice, 3 times the cost of the elevator to do the modifications to the house,
Yeah.
if you've got an existing house.
Yes.
And the same with that, it's, while they're building, they drill a few holes in the wall or in the studs and run the wire, and you don't even have to put the breaker in. Running a conduit is probably almost as expensive as putting the wire in, because it's a lot more complex to put a conduit in than it is to run a wire between the studs. So the electricians or developers are more likely to do that. But I think the biggest thing is people looking at condos and going, oh, where can I charge my car? Oh, I can't. Oh, show me something else. I'm not interested in this one. So it's a long game to do that. But I'm not really in favor of using the stick to do anything other than hold the carrot out. That you should encourage. And I really don't think that any of the government should be spending money on infrastructure. They should be legislating to encourage it. Because there is a profit potential in charging. But as long as people are giving away free electricity, there is no profit potential.
Mhm.
And level 2 charging it makes sense for somebody, like if somebody had a bakery or something and they wanted to put a charger out front, that it would encourage customers, but it's a level 2 charger. As soon as you go to DC fast charging, that I think should be legislated so that all DC fast charging should be done in that spot. So when you arrive in town, that's where you go and you find the different chargers. That I would really support legislation, that forcing the companies to not put 2 here and 1 over here, and you arrive in town and you've got to look in a town you don't know, drive all over trying to find one that's available. If they're all in the same spot, like Tesla does, you go and you just wait until one's free, available.
Need legislation for that. All that, it did that on its own initiative, and the other companies have to do these things on their own initiative too. You can't.
Yeah, but
legislate-
they're not encouraging them to do it. Everybody's saying the government should do this, the government should do that. Tesla did it. Like, why should you buy a Chev and expect the government to provide your fuel?
Exactly, and that's where it's up to the companies to do this stuff, not the province, not the governments, and the governments are getting sucked into pouring tens of millions of dollars into this when they really shouldn't be. It should be up to industry.
Can I,
Here we go.
yeah, I'd
Shelley.
also, Yeah, I'd also say that we do need to talk to the developers a lot more and the builders, because at least in Nanaimo, where I'm, there's only a certain number of really progressive builders and who are, keen on doing this, whereas the rest of them tend to do business as usual, and they're afraid of the certain percentage of 8-10% added cost that they'd have to pass on to the customer. But the reaping of the rewards of what this the infrastructure put in at the very beginning in a building is much greater than doing it later and doing retrofits, and that needs to be part of the trade understanding. I mean, it needs to be just there, and so a government, I think, can also play a role in that, and in maybe projecting certain building at a certain time, and then offering courses and that sort of thing, that and maybe reduce prices on these courses or something, so the builders are not too concerned about putting their staff into these courses and the costs that are going to be incurred. So that's all I wanted to say.
Very nice, thank you. I would just ask Henry then, I'll just sort of get my question straight here. So are you simply installing, or do you do a subscription model where you install them and charge monthly subscription rates or service rates? How does that work for your business model? Could you just talk about that a little more specifically?
Yeah. So for you're talking about like for businesses, right?
Well, it can be for residential, for multi-unit residential buildings, for individual families, a whole range.
Yeah, no, the only thing, we don't earn anything from those like monthly charges, or we don't do like regular payments. If you talk to like Flow, for example, you're able to get, I mean, we have contracts with companies such as, for example, Flow and ChargePoint, which we're able to install those chargers, but we don't earn that money for ourselves. We just, as I said, we connect one part to the other. So in the end, who's earning the money from that regular rate, or let's say if you're paying, I don't know, 16 cents kilowatt, that's gonna go to the company who has provided the charger, who made who manufactured the charger. What we do is just we get the charger and we install it for them. So we don't do that backend system part.
So you're strictly a hardware installer.
Basically, yeah, we sell and we install the hardware, but we don't have any software, we don't have any programs, but we have I was discussing the other day a lot with Sun Country Highway. I presume you guys know about them as well.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, and the great thing about them, but we're not partners with them, at least yet. But they're great because their charger for businesses, and what we were just talking about, they have you can use their software or you can use another software, because if they're open, then that's great, right? Because you can either earn the money from, they can charge you the money, or you can use another software there. But we don't necessarily do that. No, I don't know. We don't really we don't see that happening yet, because as I said, the idea for us is more of like a project management business model, because if we want to invest in that, then it's going to be, we're probably going to do either like a white label to build our own charger and then the software as well, but that's going to cost a lot, and the market's already pretty, I would say, not saturated, but there are so many brands there already that have bigger capital, that just have more money than us to do those things. So it's complicated for us to get into that business specifically, but the project management part in Victoria and in the island is very relevant, because there aren't any companies that do what we do specifically, as I said, that is solely focused in doing the installation with selling the charger all together in such a shorter period of time. So that's why we focus on that specific problem.
So we have a active member who is installing chargers as an electrical company. He's an Edwards Electric. Do you know Lee McFarland? He does electrical plans for MERBs, as well as, it's an electrical company, but he does do chargers a fair amount. You may have seen his name in connection to our website. I think he was sponsoring us for a while anyway. But Lee is quite actively involved in it. Now, he is a full electric company, as I understand, but he is doing, and worked with the club a little bit, and he answers
nice.
questions. He's been on this Zoom chat format a couple times. So I'm just giving you his name, mentioning his name because he is a contractor who works in that realm, and I have no idea what his business model. I assume he's hired to install, but he will produce an electrical install plan for a large building that needs more than just many options that need to be available, whether
Yeah.
it's maybe 20 stalls with a charger or maybe every single unit in the building, and maybe a retrofit, because some retrofits with some sharing software, sharing hardware do
Yeah.
occur. Well, anyway, it's not so much a question as I was mentioning Edwards Electric. That's one company that we talked to that's doing
Yeah, that's great.
anyway, and Lee McFarland he seems to be very open and helpful and interested. So I don't know if he'd be any help to you to talk about some of this.
Yeah, that's great.
You're
Thank
talking
you.
about partnering in a way, and I think this industry is still new enough that there's all sorts of creative options available.
Yeah.
Sounds like you're exploring some of that. Does anybody else have some question? I got one. So you're not involved in the software, so you're not collecting carbon credits, or
No.
you're not doing any of that sort of stuff. So that makes that part actually easy to understand, I guess, in a way.
Yeah. Because we're just connecting, for example, the customers to brands like ChargePoint, for example. So we don't do all the backend system. We just connect two parts.
Cool. Anyone else got a question for Henry?
Just a comment here, Don. A good way to, on your side, I suppose, to push the demand is to somehow or other push for the applicability or the ability of individuals to get carbon credits for when they charge their cars. And if that happened, it would be much more attractive for people installing chargers, and everyone would be demanding them then.
Yeah.
So in BC, the carbon credits are worth.
Sorry?
In BC, in British Columbia, the carbon credits are worth a significant amount. If I guess they add up. Does anybody know what they are right now? Is it $70?
I think Bruce might want to comment on carbon credits. He was talking about it at
Bruce.
the Vancouver meeting earlier.
Okay, cool. Bruce, are you there?
I'm still here.
Did you hear that comment, or?
Yeah, I did, as a matter of fact. Let me just change my view to a gallery view. Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so somebody's come up with a really clever idea right now of selling carbon credits to, if you install a bunch of chargers, apparently you can get carbon credits, and there's a mechanism to do that. And the carbon credit market apparently is pretty good right now. But the way carbon credits work is there's a big pool of carbon credits and you can apply to and get some of those credits. Now in British Columbia, over the last bunch of years, the Scrap It program was financed by carbon credits out of Alberta. It was a very complicated thing and I couldn't get a lot of information on it. But what I was able to put together based on some help from my neighbor, who's a chartered accountant, was there was a company in Alberta that was in the fossil fuel industry and was able to apply for the carbon credits in BC because the BC government was able to allow them to use these carbon credits to offset what they did. So when you bought an electric car in BC, a new one, you could get $6,000 off the price of that electric car when you scrapped it, or $3,000. So it all sounded really good up until December of 2021, when the provincial government changed the regulation so there were no carbon credits in 2022. You can now get a $500 carbon credit when you scrap an electric car, or a $750 carbon credit when you buy an electric bicycle, having scrapped that electric car. So,
Bruce, Bruce, can I interrupt it? Do you mean the carbon credit is if you buy an electric car or if you buy an EV that replaces a gas car?
Yeah, if you were
right.
Okay, so there's the two different carbon credits. There's a carbon credit, under the Scrap It program. If you replaced a fossil fueled car with an electric car, you could get a carbon credit when you bought that car. My friend Robert, who lives in Sointula, just finished scrapping a Dodge Caravan. It was an older Dodge Caravan, and it met the criteria of burning so much fuel and being a certain age. And he got a $750 credit, carbon credit. He got a check from Scrap It for the purchase of after he proved that he'd purchased an electric bicycle, okay, a battery-powered bicycle. So one of the things they're talking about right now is you put in charging stations in a MURB or something along that line, and you can offset the amount of, you can supply so much electricity and you can get a carbon offset for that through a carbon credit. I think it's a brilliant idea. The only problem with the details are that over a period of time, a lot more people are going to apply for these carbon credits. So right now it makes really great sense to do this, and I can see Shelley's antlers are moving up and down, so she understands how this works. Carbon credits, great sales tool right now for a short period of time. What's going to happen 5 years out? Carbon credits are going to be worthless because there's too many people going to be applying for them. So if you're planning your entire thing based on the carbon credit scheme, it's a government-sponsored scheme, and the government-sponsored schemes can change at the stroke of a pen. So that's what I was said on the Viva meeting, and that's what I'm saying here now. So please, people, let's talk about this.
Thank you.
But I think, Bruce, from my understanding, Sun Country, the way they finance their operations, is for every time you plug in your vehicle and you take a 10 kilowatt charge, they then get paid so much per kilowatt that has been provided to an electric car through the carbon credits. It's not provided through by the government. It's provided through by mostly Shell Canada buying carbon credits through a market that is set up as a central market, just like a stock market, where the carbon credits, theoretically, the value of carbon fluctuates. And you go in and you, some broker essentially buys and sells the credits.
Well, my neighbor maintained that the whole Scrap It program was financed by Petro-Canada out of Alberta. The only problem with that is you can't find that information out from the Scrap It people because they won't tell you who used to finance it.
Yeah.
So
the Scrap It program, the $6,000 or $3,000 you got through Scrap It, that was paid for by the province. But the people that ran the Scrap It program, the New Dealers Association, it was a subset of them, they made their money by every time you took a vehicle off the road, an old gas guzzler off the road, it was worth so much in future carbon credits. So they got carbon credits that basically Shell or Petro-Canada paid into the trading mechanism and received revenues to operate the whole Scrap It program through it. They got their revenues to operate the program through carbon credits. Whereas the checks actually came from the province.
Scrap It used to pay people that bought Scrap Its paid $250 for them. So you as a car owner that bought an electric car didn't pay anything, but the dealer paid $250 for the Scrap It certificate.
That could be.
No,
and they made it look like it was money from the government out of the goodness of their heart, but it was actually the oil industry getting carbon credits.
Yeah, but the government passed, like they passed the money, there was tens of millions of dollars that they put into the carbon credit or the Scrap It program. It was a budgetary expense.
But they changed.
The foolish thing is that they gave it to the New Car Dealers Association to administer instead of administering it through BC or ICBC.
Well,
it should have been administered through the oil company because they're the ones that were getting the benefit. They were just using the government to make it look like it was something legitimate. I held my nose and I got $6,000 for a $2,500 car.
Somewhere along the line, the government took a look at costs of running government. By offloading the administration of this to a private industry, it didn't appear on the government's books. The only thing that's really important is for a brief period of time there, the carbon credits financed the purchase of electric car and diverted people from buying a new fossil fueled car to buying an electric car. Now, I don't know how the federal program runs because we can all get $5,000 if we buy an SUV that's worth less than $75,000 or a sedan that's worth less than $55,000, and that program still exists, and that's a federal government program.
Yeah.
So all I know is there's only one taxpayer, and all these nice government programs get paid for out of tax dollars. Now, back to the carbon credit situation. If you think you're going to finance the installation and operation of your charging stations in your MURB in perpetuity based on carbon credits, that is fiction. So the way I would approach that, and I'm talking right now about a situation that happened during the Viva meeting, one of our guys went away and he was talking about a MURB building in Vancouver, Greater Vancouver, that has 77 units in the building, and there's 3 owners of electric cars that want to put in charging stations, and it's going to the Strata meeting for them to try and do that. And they're trying to find a way to get all the Strata members to agree to put in the charging stations or the infrastructure for the charging stations in an older building. People realize that sell real estate, one of the questions that asked of potential customers buying into a Strata now, as more and more people are moving towards electric vehicles, is there charging infrastructure in this building? So people that have Strata buildings or Strata units in a Strata should all be looking to see if there's a mechanism or if there's a possibility for them to put in charging, because they'll increase the value of their building. Most people that are in the Stratas have gray hair like this 75-year-old that's talking to you, and how much longer am I going to live? So I sure as heck aren't going to put solar panels on the roof of this house that are going to last 30 years because I'll be 105. So that as an investment doesn't make sense to me because of my longevity. If I was 20, that'd be a no-brainer. So the problem with a lot of the Stratas is the people are of an age where they're too old to see the value of what they're investing in, and all they're interested in is their annual cost of their Strata fees. So what I suggested to my friend is go to these 3 people and say to them, at the Strata meeting, they're going to stand up and say, we would like to put in electric charging for our 3 cars, and we'd like to use the same model that somebody else in Vancouver did, is they got permission from the Strata Corporation to, at their cost, install the charging station infrastructure for 5 cars. And they got that through. It cost them $25,000 for the 3 of them to put in the necessary cabling, plus the charging stations, plus the enhancement to the transformer to make this happen. And then the next 2 people joined the group that put in charging stations. You'd think they'd put in a charger for $2,000. The reality is they'd have to pay into the group to offset the cost of putting it in. It would cost the Strata $0 to put in the charging stations, because it wouldn't be something that the Strata would own. And that's how they got it done in this one Strata. So if you take a look at who's in the Strata and how they want to keep their annual cost as low as possible, they don't want it to increase, that's how you say, hey, we'd like to do this, but it won't cost you anything.
Harumph. Yeah, harumph. So there needs to be some kind of a legal structure, regulation provincially, to set this up so that everybody's working from the same page, same worksheet. This is where Glenn likes to write letters to the government and advocate. I'm not in a position to even be able to do that, but this is part of the club work. Someone like Henry should be interested. No, TrueEV, because we're talking about the opportunity perhaps to install large numbers of units.
One
So
of the things we're hoping will happen is the provincial government will come up with right to charge legislation that prevents the Strata from saying, nope, sorry, you can't plug in your electric car, because the people that have been successful in plugging their electric cars to the 120-volt outlet that's already in the garage are people that have said to the Strata and convinced the Strata they give them $30 a month to do that, and that works. And one of our members came up with a deal with his Strata, and at the beginning of the year, he'd give them a check for $360, and they put a meter on his individual plug, and they measured the amount of energy he used in the year, and they started giving him a rebate at the end of the year, because the amount of energy he actually used by plugging it in was only $200, So they said, okay, well, we'll credit the $160 extra that you've spent towards next year, and we'll evaluate what you've done next year.
Yeah, and it's interesting. The city of Colwood, they've got 2 public chargers, level 2. They've got a DCFC. They've got some other locations, but the ones at City Hall, there's the 2 public, and I think 4 for their own equipment. They've got 5 Leafs and a little mini mighty truck from Up Island, and now they've got a Mustang Mach-E. These charge level 2, and I believe I just saw a budget entry from last year. They expect $7,200 spent on electricity on their charging, which sounds to me like an incredibly good deal. Thinking about the mileage driven and gas or diesel instead. So we have the public works people are interested in the battery thing. We're just starting to look into it. And instead of this huge tank sitting in the middle of their work yard, a chunk of it is diesel and a chunk of it is gasoline. We could have these mega chargers, mega packs for electric fuel. And we were discussing it the other day on a tour of the public works yard, and it came up, and these guys are, they're interested in innovation, and they're saying, well, in an emergency blackout situation, earthquake, whatever, a severe interruption of service, you're better off with a battery pack with solar that's trickle charging it, at least that's having some sub brought in, than gasoline or diesel tanks, which when they're done, and you can't get new diesel or gas to those tanks. So he was thrilled when he heard that, not to mention the cleanup costs. Now, this is not sorry?
In City of Vancouver in 2012,
Yeah.
2010, the City of Vancouver investigated electric vehicles. They bought a right-hand drive Mitsubishi i-MiEV,
Yeah.
and they put it in their civic fleet.
Yeah.
At the last writing, I think they had 35 Mitsubishi i-MiEVs. They bought the last ones they could get when they were still available.
Yeah.
And they reached the point where they discovered that they were so economical to run. They're only a 100-kilometer car, but where you're going to go as a representative of the City of Vancouver and engineering doing a study, District of North Vancouver has got 5 Nissan Leafs running around, and they've got one that does the patrol that runs out to Deep Cove all the time from North Vancouver. It's the traffic patrol car. And the fire department's even bought a Nissan Leaf because they've looked at the fossil fuel cost of running a conventional vehicle. My large Tesla Model S uses 20 kilowatts of energy to run 100 kilometers. And that costs me at 11 to 12 cents a kilowatt hour, about $2.40. And your average fossil fueled car will use anywhere from 5 to 12 liters of fossil fuel at a cost right now of $1.50. So for municipal government not to buy electric vehicles to run on an operating cost basis is just wasting money.
Certainly is. And it seems to me another business opportunity for TrueEV to install chargers is really part of the focus of that question or comment.
Yep.
Do you want to jump in here now, Henry? You've heard us chew away at a few issues here. Any help for you? Any idea? You're listening to what I would call institutional cultural knowledge grinding away and before your very eyes. And this is valuable because you can't get it at a library or at a government office or a freedom of information request. This is the kind of knowledge and input that is just out there, which I think you sounded to me like you were interested in. This is kind of how we go. So welcome to the club. Welcome
No,
to
I'm
the
learning a
club.
lot. I'm learning a lot, no doubt.
Yeah, okay, good. I just wondered if you wanted an opportunity to speak a little bit, maybe about any aspect, obviously, just since you're here.
We are definitely interested in partnering with, for example, the city of Victoria or the other cities, especially in the island. That's what we're more focused on. And part of that relationship with the municipality is raising the awareness that you guys were just talking about, raising the awareness that having an EV and investing in an EV now, it's more worth it than having a fossil fuel car, and it's just going to get better and better. So we have a few plans to do that, and that's where we're kind of going for in the sense of partnering with the government, raising that awareness and talking to people, even like the procurement offices from the government, because they do have some procurement opportunities for EVs and EV charging. So we do that by creating those relationships with the government and creating that awareness so they can understand that and have like already a mindset that they can count on us for that. As I said, we already have worked with the government and we want to continue doing so. But yeah, it's a huge business opportunity for us. But the kind of the hard thing is the same thing that you talked about the municipality from Colwood, changing the legislation for the houses. That it's kind of hard to show the government that this is actually worth it, even though they, in paper and in reality, it is. It's really hard for them to get out of their seats and do something about it. And that's with pretty much any innovation, right? Like you know it's going to happen, you know where this is going, but you keep pointing at the wrong direction. That's even like with any kind of business, you get like, I don't know, like BlackBerry kept how many years doing the same thing. Kodak kept so many years doing the same thing. And that's kind of with the government in many ways, and with EV charging infrastructure as well. But like, I'm kind of happy of how much the government has already invested, but there needs to be so much change for them to truly understand how much this is worth it, especially because of the cost of EVs now is just getting lower and lower and better and better. Like the EVs are just getting better and the range is just getting better. So yeah, I definitely agree. It's a huge opportunity for us, but it's also hard to prove to the government this is actually a reality and this is worth it for them.
Right on. Your words are well taken and well heard. I know that at Colwood, that's fairly forward looking and they're working on building code type changes, step code actually they're using to improve and lower methane use and lower GHG gas emission with buildings and with EVs and so on. So we're fairly progressive and working harder. And I know the club, the association here, ours, has been kind of advocating for improved or accelerated targets for GHG reduction. And transportation is a big part of that. At this point, I think maybe, Henry, what I'll do is I'll open this up. We can carry on talking if people want to keep discussing sort of openly in these conversations, and please stay with us. And feel free if you like. I don't want to make you feel obligated to stay. If you'd like to move on, well, the conversation may change direction. If we have the couple taking the Lucid test drive today pops in around 2:00, we'll have an opportunity to go to that. Otherwise, I don't have anything else on the list of questions or on my list. I know Bruce Stout will add more here and that. You'll get just a sec there, Bruce. And so anyhow. Thank you very much, Henry, for your contribution today. It was awesome. Great to see you. Looking forward to more in the future. Stick around if you can. If not, that's fine. And we'll see you, talk to you again.
Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity. Definitely great to get to know you guys and learn so much from you. Because of course, my experience regarding EVs is more of the business part in developing the business for EVs. And but your practical knowledge is just outstanding and great. So it's definitely great for me to learn from you guys. And I definitely want to stick around for a bit more if you will allow me to.
yeah, please do. So some of the characters on this thing have been on this screen for years and years, and they have a huge amount of knowledge like we're discussing. Okay, Bruce, do you want to jump in here then? Unless, Jim, you have some other direction that you feel no one online. Okay, take it away, Bruce.
I won't be that long. I just wanted to talk about one of our guys who's been chasing this for a long period of time. He taught building code and all the rest of it. He looked at parking regulations, and different corporations or different municipal governments have different parking regulations they can set up. And he was looking at that as a way of trying to get more EVs in. So there's another idea for you to look at that, because a municipality has parking regulations they can put up. So that might be another way of helping people with, and the other crazy thing they've been doing lately in a lot of, with a lot of developers, they've been saying, you can put this building in and you don't need to be providing as many parking spots within the building for people that with cars, because public transit is going to take over the private usage of private cars.
Yeah.
And there's one building, a great example that they did in Burnaby, where they convinced the Burnaby government to put in that the developer could put in fewer parking spaces, because they provided the strata council that took over the building with 2 electric vehicles. One was a Nissan Leaf, and I think the other was a Tesla Model S. And as soon as the Strata Council formed, they look at the insurance cost of a public use vehicle and the liability to the Strata Council, that the first thing the president of the Strata Council voted the Strata Council to do was to sell off those two vehicles. So now we have a building that's been built that needed 50 parking spots, was built with only 25 because they would have the utility of these two public use electric vehicles, and they got sold off immediately. The building was opened. So don't let municipal governments be fooled by this developer scam to put in less parking, because people will use public utilities, or they'll have a public use car as part of the building. Those are the 2 points I wanted to make.
Yeah, thanks, Bruce. And that is indeed becoming a favorite carrot with municipalities toward developers, is a lower per unit parking requirement, always under the idea that it will encourage people to use public transit or cycle or walk.
What
The
will
problem-
encourage people to use public transit is public transit that works.
This is the problem, is that the public transit isn't really there for workable.
You
And
need like
there-
4 or 5 times as many buses to accommodate people.
yes, so
Otherwise,
then-
it's not going to work.
And let's talk about mobility issues, because a lot of the gray hair I see on this call right now. I went to an event last night, and one of the people at the event that was there last night was 92 years of age. We drove him from where he lives in East Vancouver to the event in New Westminster. The other person was in Coquitlam. Now, Coquitlam from New Westminster isn't a long way away, but she's in her 80s and she has a walker. And the understanding was she had 2 choices. One, to arrange a handy dart, and those of you who understand handy dart knows if you've got a handy dart for 8 o'clock, it can show up between 7:30 and 8:30 or 9 o'clock based on the load on the handy dart. You have to book it a good week in advance. So I said to her, no problem, we'll drive you home. So let's talk about mobility issues and public transit.
It's always struck me that a lot of these developer things, Saanich last week, I think, granted the construction of a 9-unit townhouse facility with no parking spaces. And it's on Richmond Street, which is fairly busy and doesn't have a lot of street parking. And while there may be buses that go by, what they didn't take into account is, do none of these people have friends who might drop over? Do none of these people ever need an electrician or a plumber who arrives in a truck? All those things weren't taken into account. And I constantly get the feeling when I hear what municipalities are planning, that you're dealing with a lot of councilors who grew up in the cars are bad kind of era and didn't realize that cars have changed. And they're still thinking that by getting rid of cars, they're somehow making life better when they're not.
Well, let's go and talk about the nice young couple that are single and they get married and they're both bicycle riders and they have no use for a car at all. And then they have their first child. And the first child goes through a schooling system, and about the age of whatever, that child needs to go to a ballet lesson or a music lesson or a whatever. And then mom's taxi shows up at the school after the school gets out to drive the child to the event because the kid can't get there otherwise. Now, in a perfect world, mom would arrive in a tandem bike, the kid would hop on the back of the tandem bike, and off they'd go to the event. But it's pouring of rain, or it's doing whatever it's doing, and it's just more efficient for mom to have a car. So all of a sudden, mom, at an age where she didn't need cars because she had her bicycle, realizes that maybe she needs another form of transportation. And trying to schlep a kid on a bus service and get them to an appointment in time just doesn't work.
So she'll buy a car and park it on the street where there's already not enough parking. The main drive but of not putting in parking is that developers make more money because the price of the unit is about the same. The cost of putting in parking is expensive, and every spot they don't put in is profit in their pocket.
Yeah, because, you know, whatchamacallit, the Concord Development built a building in
know.
Surrey, and the building that they built in Surrey had a $50,000 cost to a parking spot. And of course, they electrified the parking spot because they were smart. And if you bought the building, having done the electric car vehicle test drive in Surrey 2 years ago, they would give you that parking spot for free if you did the electric vehicle test drive, because they wanted some kind of inducement to sell spots in a building that wasn't selling. It was called the Park George building.
Yeah.
Well, the developers are also using the affordable housing argument that they need to have less parking requirements so they can build cheaper so people can afford the buildings. You don't have to jump all over that one. I know the answer, but I'm just passing that on, that's indeed part of the whole culture around development justification for things that's going on.
There's a new development going in a block away from Lynn's house, and it's I think it's 27 units where there used to be 3 houses.
Yeah.
And they're going to provide, I think it's 1 parking spot per person and 3 guest spots. And, you know, when I was doing service work, you drive into a place, multi-unit, one sort or another, and they got a sign, I won't use any of those words, that says no guest parking. So in order for me to get there, the owner had to park out on the street, or I had to park out on the street and back and forth and carry stuff.
Right.
There was no
And-
opportunity at all for somebody to come by and visit. But
Right.
people don't realize that until it's too late. They bought the place and they can't charge their car and they can't have friends over it. But the developer is laughing. And they seem to have all the councils in their pocket. Oh yeah, because people are going to ride the bus. I am never going to ride a bus. You know, I take the bus from Lynn's place out to the ferry pre-pandemic because it's quick and easy. But it takes 2 hours to get from the ferry to Lynn's daughter's place in Port Moody by bus. It takes 40 minutes if somebody picks me up or I drive my car. So
Right.
even one person driving all the way from Port Moody to pick me up and back, it's faster than me riding on the bus.
Well, at council, we go to a lot of meetings and we are doing a lot of carpooling. But apparently the previous council didn't do carpooling at all.
Yeah.
And right there, you put 2 people into
Well, it's
one.
probably that new hippie guy that's on there.
Yeah, I don't know where he came from, and I don't
Electric
believe
vehicle.
anything he says.
Probably from an electric vehicle association. You
That's a good point.
I think the smartest thing in the world for any elected government body, especially the elected government body in Vancouver, and I can't talk about yours, that every councillor on that elected body should be given a bus pass. And every councillor on that elected body should be forced to use that bus pass for every meeting they attend to. And you talk to these people and they said, oh, well, I'm the mayor of the city and I need a government supplied car for me to get from point A to point B because I wouldn't be able to make my meetings if I used any other method. And I think to myself, give your head a shake. You want the rest of us to use the bus. You want to take all the public parking away, but you won't use it yourself.
Also security.
Yeah.
Especially for the mayor, that I could probably say that. And
Yeah.
and maybe COVID issues. They'll say that too. Well,
Yeah,
wear a
but
mask.
But
Well,
let's be honest about it. If you boil it all down and let's get all the excuses out of the way, as the mayor of the city, I'm more important than the rest of you. Therefore, I deserve special treatment.
Yeah.
That's
Well.
why they say your worship.
Yeah. And
Well-
when Henry mentioned First Nations, your company's owned by First Nations or associated with?
We are owned by, it's 100% Indigenous owned. So the owner, which is Derek, is Indigenous, yes.
Do you know, can you see the picture in my background?
Yeah, Hydrogen
Yeah.
Energy Workshop.
Yeah, so this woman here, Tricia, is a friend of mine. She's First Nations and absolutely brilliant. She just got her master's degree. And somebody is trying to convince them to give them some government money through the First Nations that should go to something useful to do hydrogen on the reserves. I don't know what it's all about, but I've tried to give her enough information to let her know that they're headed down the wrong road, because the hydrogen industry, the oil industry has been trying to steal money from the federal government for decades and have been successful, provincial and federal governments, sucking money up for a fool's errand. It's getting worse and worse an idea, but they, oh, look, First Nations, all we have to do is convince the organization there that they should give us some money. And they'll take the money from the federal government, siphon it back into the oil industry. So I just wanted to make people aware of that.
Yeah, that's interesting. Very interesting, Eric.
Eric,
It pains me to hear it. Sorry.
Eric, can you email me the link on this to the actual organization?
There's a Facebook link only that I've got, but I will do that.
Okay, great.
You don't need it. You'll broadcast it.
Henry, I'll mention to you for your information that the Constitution of the Victoria EVA includes solar power energy, presumably wind, but it's urban, so we're talking mostly solar.
Nice.
So that's part of our advocacy, and I think they tie closely together. They sure do at my house.
Oh yeah.
Back in 2015, when Susan and I finished our trip across Canada from North Vancouver to Halifax and back, one of the things that we did on the last day in order to win the E-Mazing race sponsored by Sun Country Highway was to drive over to Vancouver Island and see the city of Sydney and all the charging stations they had, and find 22 charging stations in the Victoria area. And one of them was the First Nations at Souk.
Yeah.
With solar panels on their roof. And I think they had either one or two Nissan Leafs. This is back in 2015. They were that far ahead of the curve and understood what was going on. What was that? 7 years ago.
So I remember Gordon Plains of the Sioux Nation telling me at one point that if he could convince just the reserves on Vancouver Island to put in the same solar array that they had, there would be no need for Site C. It would produce that much electricity.
Yeah. So what we need.
And while I'm on solar with you, Bruce, if you were to get a Greener Homes grant from the National NRCan, you could be amortized by the age of 90, and I think you're more than ornery enough to get that far.
The only problem I've got, and I'll be really honest with you, is
I think you just got outstouted, Bruce.
my neighbor to the south of me, he bought that house 10 years ago, did a remodel, and the house went from a roof like that to a roof like that. I don't know whether you can see my hands or not, but I'm now in his sun shadow. So if I was able to put solar panels on the roof, I would not get any sunshine on them because his height of his house blocks my roof.
Well, that's a different reason to not do it.
Well, I know, but the reason that I give you is the common reason why people don't do things in strata, because they look, and this is what the problem that the guy's got with the 77-person strata out in Richmond right now. It's either most of the stratas, or a big block of the stratas, are foreign owned, and the foreign owners don't want their strata fees to increase, or they're senior citizens who don't have cars or don't drive, and because they've been aged out of driving, because they no longer have a license, and they don't see the value of increasing the resale value of their home, because quite frankly, it's going to be an estate sale, and they're not going to realize the value of the home when it's sold.
Yeah, that's the same for me. I just turned 73 yesterday. I've got a few more years to go. But I'd rather have that money now to spend on doing stupid things with my grandchildren than be saving money when I'm 90.
Well, I'm in a different situation in that I'm 75 and have no grandchildren because we made the decision not to have any children. You have to have children before you get grandchildren.
Oh, that's how that works.
Well, I just thought I'd explain that to you.
Man, I bet you Henry's happy to be on this call today.
Well, actually, Henry's in a great position right now because if he's part of a First Nations organization,
I know, it's brilliant.
education level of the First Nations in this country is huge. They understand as stewards of the land, looking for the next 7 generations, which is what they do. He's in a great position to push this forward.
Yeah, no, that's very exciting news. I didn't realize that about it until you mentioned it, Henry, and that's I'm interested to continue the conversation with you. By the way, I just mentioned Henry's article that he was talking about. He put that up on the chat for folks.
Yeah,
So I
it was an article why Vancouver Island is a perfect place to own EVs.
Yes, so I just downloaded that, sent it to my email so I can read it later.
Yeah, great.
That's
Awesome.
great. Yeah, thank you. And I know I can contact you through Jim. I'd be interested to continue talking to anyone who's got interest in how we can accelerate the effectiveness of uptake of EVs through municipal governments. It's a tricky path, and yes, all you say about the developers is true, but in Colwood, especially with the election, we're trying to invert that direction where the developers are telling us how to run our country and our city, and we're going to turn it the other way up, and it's going to come from the ground up, and that really gained a lot of traction. Thanks, Bruce. I hope to get, we can get stuff done. And there's others on council. And by the way, our mayor is also quite progressive. I shouldn't say quite, very progressive in that regard. So I'm looking forward to some good things. And we're also working with the Souk School District and the First Nations on all kinds of community amenity type cooperative stuff. I'm just really excited about this. And if we have a company that's installing chargers and is adept at such things, that just the more players in the game from different angles, the better it all is. So I'm getting excited about this, and the longer we speak. So thank you.
Yeah, you guys are very fortunate over there in Vancouver Island because I think you got your stuff together.
Well, thank you. We work hard, and I've worked hard at it, and we've been diligent. And it's something about just sticking to it, right? Just keep chipping away. And we've just been lucky too. I think we have a good group of people, the membership, everything. We do an event, 30, 40 people show up for a car wash, raise some funds, do a good thing, and everybody just chats. It's a really, there's a nice sort of collegiality about it, which I think is perhaps the strongest positive point. People aren't infighting or just debating. We're actually just working away.
Collegiality, does that mean harassment?
Yeah, I hope so.
I think there's a lot of that back and forth here.
Only when you're involved, Derek.
Well, isn't it fun?
No, I think you guys have really got something positive going there. And don't ever sell yourself short, because you are in the city where the provincial government is a situation where you just have to walk next door and talk to them. You don't have to get on a boat for an hour and a half, plus to drive to a ferry terminal to get somebody's ear.
Yeah, I think that helps for sure.
Yeah, and we've got good people on it too.
Yeah, keep making friends in the government because it's a valuable thing to do.
Well, our current president, Glenn Gary, it's sort of too bad he's not here today because he'd have a lot to contribute, I think, in his insights into bureaucracies and government and how it works and how to be effective and do it respectfully. It has to be respectful, otherwise you lose friends. It is remarkable. So we keep chipping away at that angle, and certain people, and then some various people inputting ideas is really valuable.
Here's one other thing I'll share with you. Almost a decade ago, maybe it wasn't quite that long ago, one of our members of Viva lived in a riding of a person that was a member of the opposition. He was a rather tall guy. Later on, when his party formed government, he became the Attorney General of the province of British Columbia. And we went to his office to have a meeting with him as a member of the opposition to talk to him about electric cars. And he went out for a test drive in my Nissan Leaf. And then when we walked to the Nissan Leaf to go for the test drive, and somebody else showed up, recognized him and started talking, and he was a constituent. So we all, 4 of us, piled into my Nissan Leaf. And this guy, I said to him, "You want to sit in the front, David?" And he said, "No, that's all right. I'll sit in the back because the constituent sits in the front. He's the most important person." This guy went in to get himself another job. He's now the prime minister or the premier of the province. And I'm talking about David Eby.
Cool.
So he's been for a ride in an electric car a long time ago. He knows what they're all about. And the fact that he put the constituent in the front seat and he, as an over 6-foot person, crammed himself in the back seat says a lot about him and his intelligence and his understanding of where he fits into the infrastructure and the ecology of the government. So I think we're in a good place with him.
That's good.
He won't be taking us for a ride because he'll be in the back seat.
Thank you. Well said.
Right on, backseat driver.
The Minister of the Environment is on his second Kia Soul. That's George Heyman. So.
Yep.
Oh,
Well, the way he started off with giving away more money that ICBC doesn't have, I'm questioning his longevity.
There's probably going to be an election in 2023. There's probably a good chance of a federal election 2023 because the guy.
We just had a provincial election last year. If he calls an election now, the people will be furious about it.
Well,
We had a COVID election, remember?
yeah, I remember that 2021.
Yeah.
But that was a different prime minister, a different premier. That guy's retired. We got a new premier now.
He may have retired, but it reminds me of David Pearson called a snap election when he thought he was doing good in the polls, and he lost the election. That's when Bob Ray came into office.
You know that the Green Party right now is sending out documentation to people, letters to people, wanting donations because they're afraid of a snap election. They even had an article on the front page of the Vancouver Sun worried about a snap election.
right on. I'd hate to suggest the conversation is sliding a little off the EV front, but that's okay. It's okay. I understand it's about influence and
But the
compatibility.
The goal of the whole exercise is to try and find, to try and build a friendship and a rapport with the government, so we
Yes.
can get them to do more EV stuff.
Absolutely. I agree
Stuff for
completely.
their friends. I mean, we've got one person right now that's already got himself elected in Colwood that understands what EVs are all about. That's
I'm-
important. Any guy that can bake bread with sunshine
Yeah.
is pretty smart.
It's pretty awesome. Kids all got it back. That was 10 years ago, 11 years ago. And that I think we put our first solar panels up and the kids all got it. And I still, all these years later, I grind away, good luck to you, Henry, with trying to sell these ideas to business owners who often blame it on the owner of the building. They say, the landlord, I can't touch the roof. I can't do anything.
I feel
don't.
that.
Pardon?
I feel that.
I bet. Yeah. So I find that frustrating and trying to talk to business owners because we put the solar panels and put signage up to show that we were doing it. And people were driving by honking horns and thumbs up out the window. It was such a positive marketing success that I don't understand why people don't just jump all over, but they don't. And the kids get it, but when they're 8 years old, they don't have the cash flow yet from the newspaper route to buy a Tesla. So we have to wait 10 years till they even get into the workforce, perhaps, or longer. So I'm still waiting for those. It was like anybody under 15, 10 years ago, it was like anybody under 12 got it. Solid, rock hard, instant. Oh, that's a battery powered car, they'd say. Is that one of those battery powered? No, Mom, that's not a pan of fudge. That's a solar panel that's running energy to the oven. And because the mother didn't understand why the tray of fudge graphic was up on the front of the building. And this went on, it still goes on. So maybe it's our old rusty brains just won't absorb the reality of it. And we just have to wait, maybe 2050 is a reasonable target because that's how long it's going to take. I don't know. But meanwhile, some of us are working at it and we're going to keep plugging away because it's so exciting when it works. So
Henry, you're younger than the rest of us here. You know about the 7 generations. You know about the group you work with. Yeah, I gotta go for a walk now. So
Just
I
a bit
know you
younger.
guys have an enjoyable meeting without me.
Okay, take care, Bruce. Thanks for your usual stimulating input.
Yeah. David, I'm gonna go
Yeah.
soon as well. I have a
Yep.
question for you. So how often do you have those meetings like this?
Just once a month. Jim, why don't you take that answer?
Yeah, our Zoom meetings are once a month, usually the second Saturday.
Oh, nice.
That's going to be adjusting though as we get more to. No, it probably won't because we'll combine it with the public meetings, the live one.
Well, you're in Victoria, so you can attend the live ones too, right, Henry?
Yeah, I'm in Victoria. What I was gonna ask is that you guys are talking about things that, as you said, it's not really in the internet or anything like that. It's like your personal opinion from things that it's really are hard to find. And
Yeah.
so I'm actually really interested in joining future meetings to learn more with
So-
you guys, if that
Well,
was possible.
We'll attach, with your permission, I'll add you to our email list and you'll get our newsletter, which will tell you everything that we're up to.
Yeah. Awesome. Is it possible for me to join future meetings as well?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We have a membership, but it's free. If you'd like to go to the website and join, there's no qualification. You don't have to own an EV. There's no fee. And then you'll get the email as well, or Jim will attach it. And then that will give you all kinds of cool links and stuff might be helpful. You can submit material to Jim, and you can also attend the Zoom meetings, absolutely, for sure. Or if it's a live meeting, you'll see the news through the
And
newsletter.
we're pretty good about keeping people up to date in meetings we've had with, public officials and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
that's all
We're
through
talking.
sorry. Go on.
No,
No, go.
all of that is available through the website or through our social media things. So
Okay, so if I subscribe to the newsletter, I'm already going to receive
Yeah.
Okay,
you'll get
yeah,
it.
great. I'll do that because, yeah, as I said, I think it would be great for me to understand more of what you guys go through, because my side of the story is just the business side of the story, right? The input that you guys are giving me is very valuable, and it's going to help me understand how can I do better business? How can I do better? How can I understand more what you guys go through? Because it's really, most of the people that we do installations for, they don't have a tenth of the knowledge that you guys do. So it's really good for me to understand and to get that input from you guys, so I can do better and I can know more.
Cool. And I imagine we can benefit from that relationship just because the feedback from that commercial angle, I know I find it very interesting. And because sometimes it's an angle that you don't hear.
Yeah.
And because we certainly know that we can do better.
Of course. And then let us know when you go public so we can buy shares.
Okay, I'll let you know. No worries. Yeah, but yeah, no, this is great. You guys are great. It's beyond what I thought, to be honest. You guys are phenomenal. And I really am interested in joining future meetings to actually learn more, listen than talk, to be honest, because you guys are great. And I think I have a lot to learn with all.
That's awesome. Sure.
Cool.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Absolutely welcome at any meeting. It's a open, transparent public event. So
Awesome.
you have to come to some of our fancy.
Oh yeah, I'd love that.
And-
Do that in person or online. I'm all up to it.
Henry, I sent you information about the Vancouver Club. There is a $25 annual fee to join, but I think they
that's
let
fine.
people join the Zoom meetings. And I also sent you a link to Jim Heinsohn's video when he did a presentation about electrifying MRFs.
MRFs.
Yeah, no, that's perfect.
He's working as a consultant doing that. He's a retired engineer.
And he lives in Victoria here.
He lives in Victoria. He's brilliant. It'd be worth your while to hire him for an hour or two just to sit and talk to him.
Yeah, no, that's
Although he might
great.
do it for free. I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's amazing, guys. As I
And
said,
contact.
yeah, I have a lot more to learn from you guys than you from me. As I said, I have a lot of the business part of the business angle. If you're interested in like whatever I can help you guys in that sense, I'm here. But yeah, I'd love that. I'll definitely subscribe to the newsletter, and for the Vancouver Association as well. I think it would be great to get that input as well. But yeah, you guys are great. And like you said, you have some in-person meetings as well, or events and things like that?
Yeah, we don't have a schedule for 2023 yet, but it'll be worked on soon.
Okay.
Actually meeting on it on Monday.
But sorry, Jim, what date is the Eco Night? You might want to put that into your calendar, Henry. It's a hockey game, but there's lots of stuff going on in the concourse.
Yeah, Saturday, January 28th. I think it's a Saturday.
Okay. January 28th. And that's in person, right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
at Save On Foods Memorial Arena, and it's actually
right
a
by
hockey
our
game.
office.
Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah.
And then you can get a little exposure to hockey. A little punch up happen maybe in this. No, I'm kidding.
Couple great fights last night. It was
What? Jim's got season's tickets, so if you want to know what's happening with the Victoria Royals, you ask. Anyway, we have the concourse full of EVs all around, and then we do a little electric car parade on the ice. Sometimes there's car charger companies there. There's e-bikes, all kinds of cool stuff shows up. Solar demonstrations. So yeah,
That's
businesses.
great, guys.
And
Yes, that's coming.
related
thank
to
you so
that,
much.
I forgot to stick this in the newsletter, but we're still looking for an F-150 for the night. We're holding
The
a spot,
Lightning.
but the local Ford dealership just not able to acquire any. So
What?
I know.
Haven't they sold some? Don't they have a customer
Yeah.
that's?
No,
Ford is number 2 in electric vehicles. How could they not have any in stock?
I don't know. Right, exactly.
There's always a bit of sarcasm, Henry. So
It's just so easy though. You're number 2 when you got 7% of the market.
yeah,
Oh, and I want to say, Shelley was talking about costs, like 8% increase in cost. It's more like 0.8% increase in cost. It's almost nothing. You're looking at a house, to actually build a house is going to cost you a couple $100,000 and maybe $2,000 to pre-wire it to charge your car.
I had a builder
Is that-
talking about Colwood solar ready conduit. He told me, oh, that would cost us about $20.
Yeah.
Really?
It's, yeah, because I
Those
was
Pre-wiring
just,
is almost incidental.
yeah, I was thinking more of if you went totally to passive solar housing, yeah,
Oh,
to
Oh.
a fully almost zero carbon house. So that's where I got that. I shouldn't have, I probably should have clarified that. Thanks.
there's a builder in town who says it's actually cheaper now to build passive.
Yeah.
I don't know, because you get to a certain point and you no longer have to provide the furnace or the air conditioning. So you save all that money because you don't need it anymore. And so then all of a sudden the cost comes down and then the other things go up and you're at neutral. And that's where we're going to be real soon. And this guy's already building, and he was going to do a step code 4 building or 5 in Saanich. And they stepped it back because it was going to be a bit much from step 5 to step 4. Well, step 5 is passive house standard. It was a small town. It was I believe it was a townhouse development.
Yeah.
But
well,
we built a 1,700 square foot passive house in Winnipeg, and it cost us, and that was in 1985, and it cost us $400 a year for heating.
Right. So the cost of
In
ownership
Winnipeg.
brings it down, and it's even in the end you save money, and then you
Yeah.
go to sell it.
It-
And when people look at mortgages, your cost of operating the house, of course, subtract from your mortgage qualification. So you drop the cost of running the house and you qualify for more mortgage. So before you know it, the house sells faster, is worth more because
yeah.
it's cheaper to run. And same argument with EVs. So I think that this is really exciting because we have lots of builders going on right now. And so we're just sort of getting a taste of where we can push this thing
Yeah.
from the political perspective.
Yeah.
I just hope that the province and Mr. David is as forward thinking as we have heard he might be, because it's really provincial building code that needs to change. There's limited tools within the municipalities, but we are scratching away and using them as much as we can, or trying
Well,
to. So
the municipalities have some stuff around building code, because I remember when I was on the roundtable for the environment, we were dealing with water in particular. And I think the CRD brought in requirement for low flow toilets. I'm quite sure that was the CRD and not the province that did that, but I could be wrong.
I don't know that. We don't have anything to do
It's
with building.
worthwhile checking. And are you on the CRD as well, Dave?
I'm on the electoral district. I am, but not for the South Island Prosperity. Wonder if you could walk.
Are you a CRD are you a CRD or representative for Colwood on the CRD board?
Yeah, but not for water. It's I'm on the
No.
JDF Water Distribution
No,
Commission.
but you're on the general board for the CRD. All councillors aren't.
No, not just one representative to the general board and the mayor, but there or one representative, but
Yes.
assigned committees, and we haven't even started to meet yet.
Yeah.
So I'll see.
That's a good
but-
body as far as for connecting with what's going on in other municipalities and coordinating things.
the province gave us the step code, so that's the carrot. You can say to a builder, you have to build to step code 4 now. And Colwood just did this a month ago, with 2 meetings back. So we said step code's got to be here, unless you put in a low carbon energy system, AKA heat pump, then you can do level step code 3 plus the LCES unit.
But what,
That way
what,
you remove methane from the building and you lower the GHGs. So it's a carrot
but
approach.
I don't understand so what's the difference between step 3 and step 4?
It's the standard, I forget what the numbers are, but it's
Is
got
it
to
like
do with
insulation?
GHG emissions. It's a whole packet of things. So it's the standard to which you're building in terms of GHG emissions. So step code, we're pretty much at step code 3 now, and the province I think is now too. So it doesn't matter that we moved to 3, but we said step code 4, or you can still build to step code 3 if you get rid of methane, no natural gas. And it's so you're encouraging the builders to build to step code 3. If they build to step code 4, they can't have methane because you can't reach a step code 4 with natural gas in the house.
Yeah.
So that's sort of one of the tools that we have to use, and the province set that up. But that's got nothing to do with building code. It's everything to do. It's just regulation.
But the
Just
step
maybe the-
code, to get to the step code, you have to have a building code, I would imagine, to get there, but maybe that's a different
No.
approach you're taking.
No,
If they're saying what you have to have, they give you
Well,
a goal that you have to meet.
it's
as
tied to
far as
that, but
emissions.
not the building code is not stepped. The building code is the building code, and the province has 100% control of it, and it's just where it is. So this step code is the idea. You could build above building code standard, but you're not building to the code. I know it's a funny concept.
Yeah, I just don't understand why you would allow people to build a step 3 if you're trying to get them to reduce emissions.
The idea is that it's a carrot approach. So you can build to step 4, which is going to be a little bit more money, or you can build to step 3 plus heat pump. I know it's weird. I don't necessarily
Well,
agree
the step 3, the heat pump should give you step 4.
No, you have to do more than just the heat pump.
Yeah. But so you're allowing people to build a less insulated double windows instead of triple windows, for example, or R20 instead of R30 in a wall.
Yeah, it all comes down. It all comes
Pardon
down to a whole package of things. Yes.
Yeah, appreciate.
And
that,
step
but
code 5 is a passive house. So step code 5 is very hard to achieve. But there's builders who are building to step 4 and 5 already, and they say, I've heard some of them say that it doesn't really cost more. This is the point to Shelley's comment about the costs, because it's interesting how much less it's going to end up costing people. And then my argument about solar panels installed to someone like what Bruce Stout said about the cost and being old and never seeing the savings. Well, he's not going to see the payback from his Tesla shares either. So what's that got to do with anything? His age has nothing to do with it. If he's saving and returning, if he's making a 7% return a year with his solar panels, what more does he want? And I mean today, and then Eric is saying he's
Tesla shares today.
And Eric's not going to invest because he wants to spend money on his grandkids. But what about the savings? It's an investment. That's really what I talk about. I talk about the 5 to 7% return that you get on that investment. And then when you sell your house, you get more of it back. Now you could sell your house a week before you pass away so that you at least can enjoy that profit.
When in our house in Winnipeg,
I'll put that on the calendar.
Yeah.
So our house in Winnipeg, we went to triple pane windows instead of double. We did R30 in the walls instead of R20, and R50 in the ceiling instead of R40.
Thanks. Sorry, thanks, Henry. You have to go. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone. It was great to meet you all.
Thank you, Henry.
I'll subscribe to the newsletter or get in touch with the Vancouver Association as well. It was a pleasure meeting you, and I learned a lot today. Thank you so much.
Yeah, super. Thank you.
Awesome.
Sorry to cut you off there, Don. I was just
Bye-bye.
No problem. It's just that these are basic things when you're trying to get your energy consumption down that you do in a home.
Of course.
That, I mean, there's no excuse today, and there hasn't been an excuse for 25 years. For the additional cost for our house to do what we did to get the energy efficiency so high was that we, the cost, additional cost was probably about $3,500, $4,000 on 100, at that time it was 120,000 to build the house, I think.
Right.
So it's a pretty, 4% additional, 5% at most additional cost to do that, and you got it back within 2 years.
Well, that's it. You get it back, and then people pay more
Yeah.
for the house and sell it. So
Sadly,
there's no argument, but it's valid.
I wish more people would pay attention to what energy on a house, and that the house would go up in value if we did energy efficient stuff on the home. But I don't see I hope there's more people take that in consideration, but right now they're more interested in what the kitchen and the bathroom look like,
Okay.
sadly.
Yeah, we all have our
That's always
priorities.
been true.
And here, I mean, we've been in bidding wars for houses up until just the last few months.
Mhm. And I think people need to shop around for developers, because it seems there's only a few in, I'm speaking from Nanaimo, that do that. The rest are doing the business as usual, and they're balking at going anything higher and saying, oh, it's going to cost me way too much, and I don't want to learn anymore.
Yeah. Well,
So-
that all depends on your developer, your / builder,
Absolutely.
and what interest they have. And if you find one that says that stuff, you don't want them building the house anyway, because you know they're going to slap it together as cheap as they can.
And there's
we really lucked out. The guy that we had, he wanted to learn of what I was, wanting in the house. He hadn't built a house like that before,
Right.
and he was really keen to participate and learn and learn along the way. He even came over and watched as I was doing some of the taping up for around. It didn't have the nice little sockets you have now for junction boxes, or you have outlets on the outside wall. So we basically had next to no outlets on the outside wall. And when we did have them, we wrapped them up, and he actually came to learn how to do that and get his people doing that as well. He was just really keen. It was fabulous. Anyway, interview your builder before you build.
Yeah, and there are good builders in Victoria doing it, and
Yeah.
they're growing in size and they're growing in number. I had an interesting conversation with my ex-landlord. He's just built his retirement home on the same lot he owned and rented to us when we bought the bakery 27 years ago, and it was just a little 1,000 square foot bungalow, very poorly built in the old style. Anyway, he's finished his house, and he toured me through just before he got his occupancy permit and was describing some of these features we're talking about. He has no gas heat, but he did have gas for a fireplace, but it was a very fancy passive air circulation thing with no fan. So there's something special about it. And then it was expensive. And then also for a outdoor barbecue connection, which he would use some. And then his hot water on demand gas as well. However, the electric fireplace, I suppose if you want live flame, it's tricky to replace that for sure. Anyway, he told me the house was step code 4 and his builder was keen on it. It was voluntarily step code 4. I asked him how much more, and this is he just got his occupancy permit 2 weeks ago, and he said somewhere between $18,000 and $25,000. His builder figured cost him extra for this step code 4 building. So he's building above the requirements, the province certainly, and of that program we're talking about with the city, which is just newer. He then went on I asked him then, so what do you think it was about your builder that made the difference? And I was surprised by the answer. He said, fastidiousness. So I still chew on that answer, because every time I think back to my building experience for 2 years in Ontario, when I was in my early 20s, and I look at what I see and all my 35 years of experience hiring employees, the fastidious employees have always the best value. They do the best work, most efficiently, with the most care, and they really are following the physics and the techniques and all of it's all there in the book. So you think about building a house, you're not gouging the vapor barrier or whatever. Things are fitting tight and you're doing the things you're supposed to do. and you're taking the time to make it all fit and work. And so anyway, there you have that. Yeah, you like that, Shelley? I do too. Yeah, that's one of my favorite. Fastidiousness. I'm going to pass a motion for fastidiousness in life.
My son-in-law has to hire people in various countries for short-term things, and he says they've got to have a course that teach people how to give a shit.
Yeah, well, that's it.
Because even if you know it, if you don't care.
And you're sloppy, yeah. And the sloppiness is sometimes they just don't know it. Sometimes, often it's about caring, isn't it?
But like you say, turning with a sheet of plywood and gouging the vapor barrier and going,
Yeah.
oh, too bad.
Yeah, and then not fixing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I want to say in 1976, just after my son was born, I built a house. And I used 2x6 construction, and people said, you don't need to do that. This is BC. I used double glazed windows. You don't need to do that. This is BC. I made my own wooden windows.
Wow.
To give that extra insulation. I plumbed the toilets so they could be flushed with gray water. Never got around to hooking that up, but I did a whole bunch of stuff. And oh, you don't need that. You don't need that. And it was only a matter of months later that the Canadian Building Code changed to encourage at that point 2x6 studs, so you get R20 insulation.
Yeah, and look where we are now.
And then I built a greenhouse on the front of the house. It was just an extra sunroom thing. And all I had to do was open up the door to the sunroom, and it would heat the house whenever the sun was there. And I put a solid roof on it with skylights. And in the summertime, when it got too hot, I just open up the skylights and let that extra heat out. But in the wintertime, when the sun was way down over here, it shone through the front windows and warmed the house. So any sunny day, I didn't use any firewood. That's a high carbon thing, but.
Yeah, and I think one of the answers to the need for government regulation is simply that, exactly that, Eric, where people think that you should only have to do what's required or what's necessary. And I think they're all, they build to the lowest possible standard. So you have to keep, and who's going to regulate that? Otherwise, you're going to have a hodgepodge of really sloppy construction. I think that's interesting how some people build above what's required because they want it, and it's the right thing to do.
A friend of mine was a building inspector, and he kept pointing out, the building code is the absolute minimum you can do.
Yeah.
It's not
Right.
It's not an ideal standard. It's the absolute minimum.
Yeah. And that's why the step code was brought in, and municipalities use it to try to increase the standard they build to outside of the building code.
Oh, the other thing I did was I used 6 mil polyethylene for the vapor barrier when 2 mil was what was required.
Yeah, interesting.
Fighting with this big giant sheet of fluffy stuff, and it would end up with holes in it.
Oh yeah, that 2 mil stuff was like saran wrap. It was useless.
Yeah. Well, if you have 2 or 3 people working on it, you could do it, but it would tear holes in it. You have to tape it up if you want to do a good job and all that.
I was usually stuck by myself to install the vapor barrier. It's not easy to do it without gouging it, and to do it properly, it takes time. Fastidiousness.
Hey, David, this is fascinating conversation.
Hi, John.
I'm my wife and we've decided we're going to leave Vancouver, sell our townhome, and we're actually going to be moving to Victoria. Hoping to find a heritage home in Victoria. That's what we've always wanted to live in. So it'll be a energy renovation project for sure. I'm sure the ones I've looked at range from, of course, some of them still burn oil. And I was surprised to see a Victoria coal and oil truck going down the road. The last time I was there, as sort of wow, archaic. But one of the things I want to ask
is archaic. I don't think you can get a bag of coal anywhere.
I actually brought some coal home from the Gulf Islands last week. It was some blacksmith coal. I've never seen coal. Well, I'd never handled it, but these big chunks of coal that are, you can tell they're like bitumen, right? It's like bitumen.
Yeah.
That's what it is. And it's lighter than rock. It's lighter than rock. I told my father, and he said, "Oh yeah, we used to put coal in our furnace because, or in the the stove because it would last all night long. You know,
Yeah.
because it's just got so much more energy in it. But
It's
actually,
just
the question I have is about solar. Back in the aughts, I was on Solar BC board, and we were frustrated to try and get solar thermal installed because the municipalities were having conniptions about mixing thermal loop water with potable water, and they were totally concerned about contamination and stuff. Has that improved? Because I would like to have solar thermal as my fundamental heat source for I intend to store hot water in the basement of my home and then run everything through it.
So I
I
have,
wherever I need heat from, preheat cold water for hot. Where does that stand in the step codes and stuff?
I can't answer that completely, but I do have a solar hot water thermal system on my roof, which was put up 10 years ago when it was still financially advisable. There is, though, a heat exchange on the unit in the roof to glycol, which is pumped through a separate system. It goes into a heat exchange unit in the tank, which is built in Vancouver, stainless steel, 60 gallons. And that heat exchanger is separated from the potable level, apparently. And I didn't understand it because I think of that very thing you're talking about. So in that regard, it's not improved, except the equipment may be better. So it is quite an efficient system. Apparently 80% of the energy of the sun hitting those tubes on the roof ends up as heat in your tank. But subsequent to that, I've spoke to Island Energy, who come and they check out some of my equipment annually, and they said they don't sell those units anymore because financially it works. It's better to generate the electricity with solar power and then heat your water with electricity. A dollar return on value. So just a bit of information for you. That's just very superficial, but to give you a start. And I think your thing about the potable water thing is, if anything, they're more anal about it than ever.
Yeah.
You know, in your garden hose, you have to have backflow preventers and our irrigation systems and stuff. I don't know if that must be national. I can't imagine that's just CRD, but anyway.
Well, the other way, I mean, one of the developments that, storage of energy is a big deal, right? Electricity, whatever. You've probably heard about the guys in Sweden or Finland, or can't remember now. They are using sand, and they're heating solar thermal, or they're heating sand to very high degrees, up to they're saying 600 degrees C, which is industrial strength heat. And then as storage, and then of course they can, with 600 degrees heat, you can heat water, you can do whatever, you can turn into steam, you can run steam turbines. As a cheap way, as opposed to lithium ion cathode technology, everything else, right? Just simply have, and the energy capacity of sand is quite high. And one of the things they've learned, of course, is if you have very fine sand, it has even more heat capacity because there's less air in it, because, so things like that. You can make really cheap energy storage. And so if you had a loop that just went through, had two separate loops, loop of hot water, and basically you don't have to be concerned about having, with the right sensors, you could just run basically gray water through your solar system. You just have to always be careful whenever it gets cold, right? I mean, that's the main thing. And you have, if it's an open system, it's not going to explode or anything like that. So keep it fairly simple. Use the heat.
John, I've known a fellow who went whole hog on this down in the Cook Street Village area. Renovated an old home, spent over $30,000 on his hot water heating system, and it never worked properly. And he had different people come in trying to get the thing working, and I don't think he would ever go back and revisit that again. You're much better off, as Dave said, putting up solar panels.
Just go solar, CPV.
And then using the solar panels to generate electricity to run a hot water heat pump.
Yeah.
So we installed a year and a half ago a heat pump hot water tank, and that is really efficient. It's probably cut our Well, I know it's cut our overall bill down probably in excess of 1,000 kilowatt hours a year. And that the total kilowatts of the thing, I'll check on this in a minute and I'll get back to you on it, or just what it's used, because I can got a little program here that can go in and tell me what it's used so far this year.
So ours 10 years ago was 9,000 after a fairly significant incentive. I think it was $4,500 or $5,000. So it's quite expensive, but we don't run a hot water heater in any way for 6 months of the year, mid-April to mid-October.
Yeah.
Of course, it depends on the sun. This time of year, it doesn't generate hardly anything. But
right now, I think the photovoltaics are less expensive to put up than those are.
Yep.
well, that's the whole point. Yes.
Don't
Yep.
have to deal with that side of the
So
maintenance side of it, the
that-
water contamination side.
That
doesn't
change has happened in the past 10 years.
Yeah.
Absolutely it has. Yes. Yep.
And John,
I-
whichever municipality you end up moving to, they all have very hefty rebates now or grants for converting from oil to,
Yeah.
Central Saanich are the best.
Well, actually,
get
I looked at one home. It was in Victoria, and it had been converted in the 70s from oil to electric.
Mhm.
And so it had an electric furnace. This is a fairly large older home. So I was looking at the servicing to it, and it had 100 amp cables, 100 amp cables going to this electric furnace. And I'm going,
Yeah.
boy, as a electric car guy, I could see 100 amps doing a few other things. But I was just amazed at the amount of copper. That was 4 twisted cables,
Wow.
probably, I don't know, 2 gauge or something like that each cable. It was a significant copper going from the
Yep.
panel to the furnace.
The only problem with those incentives from methane, fossil fuels to electric is if you have electric, it's old and inefficient, you may not qualify for that incentive. So you got to be mindful
Yes.
of that. It's
I
about
see.
getting rid of fossil fuels, lower GHG.
Yep. Yep.
Municipal governments right now, and this is fairly current, is GHG reduction is kind of the key they focus back to, and everything is tied to that kind of window of judgment. So methane, they can't ban methane, but they can do these step code incentive things to get people to move off of methane to heat pumps or any other low carbon energy system. And Fortis is going whole hog right now, presenting to municipal governments. We got one 2 weeks ago, and they tried to outline it. And she got asked a lot of tough questions, a lot of slice the feeling in the room with a knife feeling, a lot of tense situation. A lot of people in the room. There's all these environmental groups in the room because they knew Fortis was going to be there. They were just sitting there scowling at her. It was kind of an interesting exchange, but Fortis is going to municipalities trying to convince them of the efficacy of natural gas and, of course, renewable natural gas. And they like to call it RNG. But I have a friend in Ontario who just happens to have a biogas plant. And he says that I think it's 17 or 15% renewable, so-called biogas in the pipeline. You can call it renewable natural gas or RNG. So that's
And they are notoriously well behind on their RNG targets.
Yeah,
well behind.
And that's it. Where's it coming from? They're going to buy carbon offset from China or something, because who knows where this renewable gas, not to mention the fact that the biogas, as this friend of mine admits, is premised on waste production. And the whole idea is to get your waste production down. So what happens to your grocery store surplus if we get it down to 15% from 55%? That means your target fuel or your feedstock to your biogas plant disappears. Well, and this is already a problem in Sweden where they don't have enough waste anymore for their waste stream heat recovery.
I mean, there's a limit, but there's also a never-ending supply of waste streams. I invested in a company 20 years ago that eventually went out of business because they had some tough breaks, but they were, it was called Paradigm Environmental, and they had a system, high 10,000 PSI way of processing sludge waste in sewage treatment plants. And And after the solids are taken out, they would, all the rest of it, they would process it through this high pressure port to basically broke the cell walls of all the biology in it. And then it would change methane or digest much faster, like 90% faster.
Okay.
And so they'd have this huge amount of methane they could produce from the waste stream, and it really reduced the net solid waste that had to be discarded of later. Now, this was, I mean, that is a source of if you can get that methane and trap that and use it for consumption as opposed to just going off into the atmosphere, that's a major thing. And I think everybody can agree that there's a lot of sewage treatment that is happening that we're not capturing any of that. Now that technology.
Well, we're doing that here in the CRD in Greater
Yes.
Victoria, where we have an energy recovery unit on it.
In
Yes, but-
the new sewage treatment plant that's being put in?
No.
Yeah.
No, in Heartland landfill.
Oh, in the landfill. Yes, I know they
But-
have in the landfill, but the
but the
sewage
problem-
treatment.
No,
There's a-
but out at the landfill,
Okay.
that's where they pump the sludge from the sewage plant. And the sludge goes through a unit out there that cooks it and takes energy off of the methane that comes off of it. As
That's
well,
good.
I think, aren't they even within the sewage plant itself? Is there anything within a sewage plant that like heat pumps that work off of the warmer water coming into this plant? Dave? I don't think there
Vancouver
is.
does that. Vancouver has by the Cambie Street Bridge. When you go over the Cambie Street Bridge, you see 3 stacks. That is a heat recovery system. There's arguments about that. Whether you take the heat out of the feed into the sewage treatment plant, then you have to raise the temperature at the sewage treatment plant to make sure that things are digesting. I don't know.
Yeah, that could be too.
It gets huge real fast.
John, here's my, I don't know if you can see this.
Yep.
My energy usage from my hot water tank, heat pump hot water tank is 473 kilowatt hours so far this year. So that's cost me less than $50 for hot water for the whole year.
I just one of the Viva members here, longtime Viva member, Dave Cohen. I went out to his house last week and took a look at his hot water heat pump that he has, and he basically said it was fantastic in the summertime. Anytime you needed some hot water, you also used it to cool your house. It's pretty good.
Well, I tried that because the water comes off it really cold. So our house has basically 3 stories to it. There's a basement, and then the main floor of the house, which is partially on slab, and then there's an upstairs at 2 different levels. And so we have a ducted hot water or a ducted hot air heating system. And the old or the hot water tank is on the slab part of the house. So when it was installed, the unit is only a foot from the wall, the exterior wall. So it's easy to exhaust out the wall. So I thought, well, we'll be smart. So I had the guys put a T-section in that 1 foot that goes out there, dropped it down to blow the cold air out to cool the house in the summertime. The house was so freaking cold all the time that I tore it out. And not only that, but the cold air goes down, so it went into the basement. And it was cool enough down there that I had some condensation problems with some mold growing on some stuff that was like leather goods and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So
there is quite a bit of engineering that has to be thought out when. Yeah. Those are all good stories. Those are fantastic.
Yeah. John, if you want, and you're looking at different heating systems, I'll send you. I've got a 20-year study of my home from pre-renovations to post-renovations.
Oh,
fantastic! What my energy consumption has been, and what it shows you what we've done in the place so far. It's a 1967 house, and if you give me your email, I'll ship that off to you. Or do you want to text it through to me through a chat?
I'll send it in the chat.
It sounds like we got makings of another entire association based on efficient energy use for building, another one for industry. Like there's so many. I don't want to cut in and well, I think we stopped recording. Have we, Jim? Or perhaps we'll stop recording now and call this little chat to a close officially, or?
It's up to you.
It's past 3. Okay.
Well, I 3 o'clock, but
it's Christmas and families on their way, so I have to get going because I gotta set the table, and it's the table I'm sitting on right now. So, but it's been a real pleasure, and I don't know, I don't want to end it too soon prematurely, but anyway, I need to get going. And I want to thank everybody so much for that, for showing up. And John, you came in a bit later, I guess. I didn't actually notice you slip in, but anyway, we had a fairly decent turnout in the end, considering the time of year and all. We have the Eco Night then on the 28th, right, Jim? That's our next thing, but we'll have our next Zoom will be in the early part of January.
Yeah, hang on.
Rudolph's back.
Probably around January 21st.
Okay.
I'd like to bring my blue Volkswagen to Eco Night, but
Oh, man,
it's
you
not
have
gonna be
to.
running by then.
We can
have
make
to.
a place for you if you want it.
Yeah, but the armature has arrived at Canadian EV in Parksville. The
Mhm.
flywheels are in the machine shop, so it's unlikely I'll have it running by then. And
Oh, man,
once I
tow
got
it.
it, huh?
Tow it.
That would be good. Here's an electric car we towed in.
Well, they don't have to know that.
Yeah,
This
I got
static-
it apart and I went, oh, it's this charging port under the back lid is not sensible. You just put it up where the gas filler was and stuff like
And-
that.
I'll mention one other thing we are looking for Eco Night. Marty, the Royals mascot, opens each game by charging around the ice on a little ATV and wants to do it on an electric one for that day. And I know they're around, but we haven't found one yet.
Okay, that's
I
cool.
think the one I have will fit my granddaughter.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he's a little big.
Well, yeah, and the electric Teslas are too small.
Yeah.
And mine has been in pieces in the shop since last Christmas.
Eric, you're gonna
So
have
we
to
gotta-
bring the ATV or the bug, one or the other, but you can't not bring both.
I'll check with my son on it because it's in Crofton at the moment.
Oh,
the
okay,
ATV.
great.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah,
Okay, folks, well,
Okay,
I
later. Merry
gonna
Christmas.
I hate to break it up. Thanks for coming around. Good to see you all.
Yeah,
Oh,
Merry
that's
Christmas,
terrific.
everyone.
Happy
Take care.
holidays,
Thanks, Ed.
everyone.
Thanks
Adios.
for the time, guys.
Hi, everyone.
Bye now.
Bye.